At exactly 6:02 a.m., the knocking started. Not polite knocking, not neighbor knocking. This was firm, measured, official. I lay there staring at the cracked ceiling fan, my phone buzzing beside me with a low battery warning, thinking it was probably the landlord again. He'd been calling nonstop ever since Mom said she'd handle the rent situation for me. I should have known better. The knocking came again, 3 hard raps, a pause, then 2 more. "Sheriff's office," a man's voice called out. "Open the door, please." My stomach dropped so fast it felt like I was falling. I pulled on yesterday's hoodie and walked barefoot across the cold tile. When I opened the door, a deputy sheriff stood there in full uniform, clipboard tucked under his arm, sunlight barely breaking behind him. He looked calm. Too calm, like this wasn't about to shatter someone's life. "Are you Alex Mercer?" he asked. I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. "I'm here to serve you an eviction order." The word eviction echoed in my head, bouncing around like it didn't belong to me. "There has to be a mistake," I said. "I live here." The deputy glanced at the papers. "The property owners filed it. Court approved, effective immediately." Property owners? That phrase hit harder than the eviction itself, because this wasn't some rental company. This house belonged to my parents. My parents who had begged me to move back after my divorce. My parents who told me, "Stay as long as you need, your family." My hands started shaking as I stepped back inside to grab my phone. "Who filed this?" I asked, even though my heart already knew the answer. The deputy hesitated for just a second. "Filed jointly by Robert and Elaine Mercer." Mom and Dad, behind my back. I wanted to scream. Instead, I laughed, a short, broken sound that scared even me. "There's no way," I said. "They didn't even tell me there was a problem." "I'm sorry," he replied, and for the first time, his voice softened. "You have 30 minutes to collect essential belongings." 30 minutes. That's how long my place in this family was worth. I called my mom immediately, straight to voicemail. Then my dad, ringing, nothing. The deputy stepped aside politely while I stumbled through the house that suddenly didn't feel like home. The couch where I'd slept the first night back after my marriage collapsed. The kitchen table where Mom cried and said, "We'll protect you." All lies. On the fridge was a note in Mom's handwriting I hadn't noticed before. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." That was it. No explanation, no warning, no conversation, just paperwork and silence. As I shoved clothes into a backpack, my phone finally buzzed, a text from Dad. "This is for the best. You need to learn independence." Independence? At 6 in the morning? With a sheriff at the door? And nowhere to go? When I stepped outside with my bag, the deputy gently closed the door behind me and taped the eviction notice to it. As the lock clicked, something else broke inside me. Because in that moment, I realized this wasn't about rent. This was punishment, and I had no idea what they were really trying to erase or how far they were willing to go to make sure I never came back. I thought the eviction was the betrayal. I was wrong, because 3 hours later, I'd discover why my parents needed me out immediately and what they were hiding inside that house. By 9:17 a.m., I was sitting in my car outside a closed gas station, watching people go about their mornings like my life hadn't just been boxed up and locked away. I replayed Dad's text again and again. "This is for the best." That wasn't my father's voice, not really. He used to over-explain everything, lecture me until my ears hurt. This message was clean, cold, final, which meant something else was going on. I called my older cousin Marla, the only person in the family who never pretended everything was perfect. When she answered, I didn't even say hello. "They evicted me," I said. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "They actually did it?" she whispered. That told me everything. What do you mean, actually? I asked. Marla hesitated. Alex, I thought they'd talk to you first. Talk to me about what? Another pause. Longer this time. I probably shouldn't say anything, she murmured. But since you're already out, there's a buyer. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. A buyer for what? The house. My parents' house, the one they swore they'd never sell, the one Dad said would stay in the family forever. They accepted an offer last week, cash, quick close, no inspections. My heart started pounding so loud I could barely hear her. And I was in the way, I said slowly. Yes. I hung up before she could say more. Suddenly, everything made sense. The rushed eviction, the silence, the note on the fridge. They needed the house empty, clean. No adult child claiming tenant rights. No complications. I wasn't their kid anymore. I was a legal obstacle. I drove back to the neighborhood on instinct. I told myself I just wanted closure. One last look. That was a lie. When I turned onto the street, my chest tightened. There was a white SUV parked in the driveway, and a real estate lockbox hanging from the front door. I parked across the street and watched as a woman in heels walked up with a clipboard, followed by a couple holding hands, smiling like they'd already picked out paint colors. My mother opened the door for them. She laughed. I hadn't heard that laugh since before my divorce. I got out of the car without thinking. "Mom!" I called. Her smile vanished the moment she saw me. Dad appeared behind her, stiff as a statue. "What are you doing here?" he snapped. "I lived here this morning, remember?" The couple shifted awkwardly. The agent pretended to read her clipboard. "You embarrassed us," Mom hissed, stepping outside and closing the door behind her. "Clean?" I laughed bitterly. "You sent the sheriff." Dad lowered his voice. "We did what we had to do." "For money?" I asked. "For survival," Mom said sharply. "You don't know everything." That was when I noticed the manila envelope tucked under Dad's arm. Court documents. Different ones. "Survival from what?" I demanded. Dad's jaw clenched. "That's not your concern anymore." Then he said the sentence that finally shattered whatever loyalty I had left. "You were never meant to come back this long anyway." I stared at them, two strangers wearing my parents' faces, while buyers walked through my former bedroom, commenting on natural light. As I turned away, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't family. It was a law firm notification. My name listed as a related party in a pending civil case. Filed yesterday. Against my parents. I thought they evicted me to sell the house, but that lawsuit notification proved something far worse. They weren't just getting rid of the house. They were running from something, and I was about to be dragged into it next. I opened the law firm email 3 times before it felt real. Subject: Notice of Related Party Involvement. Case ID 24-CV1187. My name sat there like it belonged. Cleanly typed, unemotional, official. I wasn't suing my parents. Someone else was. And somehow I was connected. I called the number listed at the bottom of the email from the driver's seat, my hands still trembling. It rang twice before a woman answered, sharp and professional. "Law Office of Calder and Boone?" "I received a notice about a civil case," I said. "My name is listed as a related party. I don't understand why." She asked for the case ID, then paused. "Oh," she said. "Yes, Mr. Mercer. We've been trying to reach you." That sentence alone told me everything I needed to know.
Your parents were named defendants in a fraud and asset concealment case, she continued. The plaintiff alleges that proceeds were diverted through family members. I swallowed hard. Family members like me? Yes. The word landed like a punch. I don't have their money, I said quickly. I barely have anything. We're aware, she replied. That's why we need your statement. When I hung up, my phone felt heavier than before. I sat there staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror, unshaven, exhausted, thrown out of my own childhood home, and tried to understand how my parents had managed to torch their lives and hand me the match. I drove to the one place I knew they couldn't control anymore, my old high school friend Liam's apartment. He didn't ask questions when he opened the door. He just handed me coffee and let me sit. After I told him everything, he leaned back slowly. So they needed you out before investigators showed up. That way you couldn't witness anything or claim ignorance. I already am ignorant, I muttered. Not to them, he replied. To them, you're a loose end. That night, sleep didn't come. At 2:41 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. Please don't talk to anyone. This can still be fixed if you cooperate. Cooperate. That word again. I didn't respond. The next morning, I returned to the house, not to go inside, but to retrieve the one thing I'd forgotten in my panic, my old laptop. It was still logged into the home network. From my car across the street, I accessed it remotely, half expecting it not to work. It did. What I found made my skin crawl. Folders labeled temp, holdings, transfer notes, bank statements, wire receipts, a shell LLC I'd never heard of with my last name attached. They hadn't just involved me by accident, they'd used my identity. I copied everything, every file, every timestamp. At 8:06 a.m., a black sedan pulled into the driveway. 2 people stepped out. Not buyers. Investigators. I watched my parents open the door, calm, practiced, ready. Ready because they'd planned this. They'd filed the eviction so I wouldn't be there when the truth arrived. And suddenly I understood something that made my chest ache worse than the eviction ever had. They didn't just betray me, they sacrificed me. I thought being evicted was the worst thing my parents could do, but watching investigators walk into that house without me, I realized they weren't protecting themselves anymore. They were preparing to let me take the fall. By noon, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls, unknown numbers, voicemails stacking up like overdue bills. Then one message came through that made everything go cold. Dad, if you talk, we're all ruined. Think carefully. Not we'll be ruined, you'll ruin us. I drove straight to the courthouse. I didn't even know what I was going to say, only that I wasn't going to sit in my car and wait while my parents rewrote the story with my name in it. The investigator I spoke to was named Deputy Alvarez, calm, observant, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. I handed over the files I'd copied. He didn't react immediately, he just nodded slowly, eyes scanning the screen. This helps, he said finally, a lot. So you believe me? I asked. I believe someone went out of their way to make it look like you were involved, he replied. That usually means you weren't. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. But it didn't last. You need to understand something, Alvarez continued. Your parents' attorney submitted a preliminary statement this morning. My stomach tightened. And they named you as the individual who controlled the accounts. The room started spinning. They what? They're claiming you moved back home to manage finances after your divorce, that you had access, authority, motive. Motive. Like my life wasn't already wrecked enough. I laughed once, sharp and bitter. So that's why they wanted me out. Yes, he said gently. If you weren't living there, you couldn't dispute their timeline. My hands clenched into fists. They threw me out so they could point at me. That's one way to put it. When I left the courthouse, my mother was waiting outside. I hadn't seen her move so fast in years. Alex, please, we need to talk. I almost kept walking. Almost. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. You don't understand what you're doing. I yanked my arm free. I understand perfectly. You framed me. Her eyes filled with tears instantly, like a switch flipped. We did what we had to do. Your father made mistakes, big ones. If this goes to trial, you let your child take the blame, I said. Say it. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said the sentence that finally killed any hope I had left. You were already struggling. We thought it would look believable. Believable. That word echoed louder than the sheriff's knock ever had. You destroyed me, I said quietly. She reached for me again. If you cooperate, we can make this go away. We'll help you get back on your feet. Somewhere else. Somewhere else. Not home. Never home again. I already did cooperate, just not with you. Her face went pale. That evening, my phone lit up with a notification. Emergency motion filed. Protective order requested. Filed by my parents, against me. They were officially trying to paint me as a threat, a criminal, a stranger. And as I stared at the courthouse glowing against the darkening sky, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. This was about ending the lie they built my childhood on. I thought the truth would protect me. Instead, it made my parents desperate. Because now, with a restraining order filed and my name on the line, they were about to make one final move to bury me for good.
The hearing was scheduled for 8:30 a.m., 3 days after the eviction. 3 days of sleeping on couches. 3 days of being labeled a threat by the people who raised me. 3 days of realizing that losing a house hurt less than losing the truth. I walked into the courtroom alone. My parents arrived together, dressed neatly, whispering to their attorney like this was just another appointment. Mom didn't look at me. Dad did, briefly, his eyes warning me the way they used to when I was a kid about to say the wrong thing. I almost laughed at that, because for once I wasn't afraid of saying it. Deputy Alvarez testified first, calm, precise. He laid out the digital evidence, the timeline inconsistencies, the shell company with my name attached without authorization. Then my turn came. I stood, hands steady, heart pounding. I was evicted the same morning investigators were expected at the house, I said. No warning, no conversation, just a sheriff and a locked door. My parents' lawyer tried to interrupt. The judge held up a hand. I continued. They claimed I controlled their finances, but I had no access to these accounts until after the eviction, when I discovered them remotely. Accounts created while I was unemployed, while I had no income, while they were still paying the mortgage. I looked directly at my parents then. They didn't evict me because I was dangerous, I said. They evicted me because I was convenient. The courtroom was silent. When the judge spoke, his voice was firm. The protective order is denied, and the court finds insufficient evidence to name Mr. Mercer as a controlling party. Mom let out a quiet sob. Dad's shoulders sagged for the first time. But it wasn't relief I felt. It was emptiness. Outside the courtroom, my parents' attorney pulled them aside. Investigators waited nearby. I didn't stay to watch them explain themselves. I walked down the steps into the morning air, lighter and heavier all at once. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. We never meant to lose you. I stared at it for a long time before typing back, you didn't lose me, you gave me away. That was the last thing I said to her. The house sold 2 weeks later. I didn't drive by. I didn't need to, because I finally understood something that took years to learn. Home isn't the place that keeps you when it's convenient. It's the place that stands up for you when it's not. I found a small apartment after that. Nothing special. Thin walls, loud neighbors, but every door I opened, I knew no one was going to lock it behind my back. Sometimes I still wake up early, around 6, and for a split second I expect knocking, but it never comes. And when the sun rises, I remind myself, the deputy didn't take my home that morning. My parents did. And walking away from them was the first thing that finally felt like freedom.